Hey there, everybody. Welcome into Hail Yes, a Detroit Free Press podcast about University of Michigan athletics. I'm Tony Garcia, Michigan football and basketball writer for The Freep, joined by our Big Ten insider. You know him as Reiner Sabin. Coming at you a bit earlier than usual this week, little Tuesday record, dropping Wednesday. That's because it is a busy week here in Southeast Michigan sports. One could say the epicenter of North American sports is here in Detroit for the weekend, and that's where we will start our show today. But before we do, I would be remiss if I did not do a temperature check on Reiner. How are things going with you, my friend?
Okay. Just trying to survive draft week and coming out of this spring game. But yeah, things are going pretty well. But yourself?
You were saying before. Yeah, good. I'm well, thank you. You were saying before this that it's not quite as hectic as when you were covering the Cowboys, right? And you were, just in the, I don't know about quite in the war room, but you were boots on the ground for days and days and days.
Yeah, lots of Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones press conferences, different parts of what was the Old Valley Ranch complex, which is kind of like a maze-like structure. So you catch them in different parts and of it, and then they would have the press conferences, and you would have the guys coming in the day after they were selected, and you'd have the in-person press conferences, but you'd also have the conference calls, and yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of hanging around, waiting to see what happened, and a lot of late nights.
Yeah, but that's show business, baby. And there's going to be some late nights coming up this week again for many of us, certainly on the sports desk. Man, our editor Kirkland Crawford, who sent out that what the game plan looks like for just managing this draft. It's going to be busy, and no one is few are as integral in that as our producer and editor Andrew Burkle. Are you resting up, Andrew?
Trying to, busy times here still. I got Wednesday off to help replenish the battery, if you will, before Thursday. So should be an all night sprint, but I'm a night owl anyways. So I don't care if I have to work late here and there into the early hours of the morning, but it is nice to have some normal hours sometimes, but that's not what the draft is about.
Yeah. It's funny. You say you're a night owl now. I never got any offers, for help when I was producing shows from midnight to 9 a.m. on weekends at our old TV station in Lansing, and you were gallivanting around mid-Michigan.
I didn't say I hate my life
and
want to work at all times, but that's kind of what that shift ends up being. There's no way to have a social life.
Yeah, I'd have to. So here's a little bit of just before we get into the show, a little background about me and Andrew. So we worked together at Channel 6. In Lansing. His now fiance, Jordan, trained me as a producer my first couple days and first few weeks. And so I would have to call her sometimes when maybe there'd be some breaking news or something. I wasn't quite sure how to handle it. Let me tell you what they sounded like on the other end of the phone, trying to help me navigate, like calling the Lansing police or set up a live shot or whatever at 3-4 in the morning. Do you remember those phone calls?
Oh, I do. My fiance Jordan would be like, "Oh, Tony's calling again." It'd be like 2 a.m, and then we'd be out having drinks or something, and Tony was just grinding, trying to get through a show. So, better days in front of us now here.
All to get here, which brings us back to, it's all good if we got to work a couple of late night hours on draft week. What better to do? And so that's where this show starts. I mean, the NFL is the king of sports. The draft is the king of the NFL. It is now in Detroit. The Lions are finally good. And of all things, it seems that no team will have more draft picks than the University of Michigan Wolverines. Let's just look at that whole thing, big picture, Reiner, because do you remember a few years ago, right? I mean, let's say 2020, when Michigan bottomed out, Michigan State also doing terribly, the Lions, putrid as always. And you just sort of wondered, when was there going to be football around here? Good football around here that mattered. Where has right now better football in one little block, college and pro? I mean, the football vibes are high, Reiner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, all around the state of Michigan, it seems to be the case, but particularly in Southeast Michigan with the Lions and University of Michigan right now. I mean, defending national championships, defending national champions with Michigan, and then you also have a team that just made it to the NFC Championship game and was on the cusp of going to the Super Bowl. So. Yeah, I mean it's good, and I think I wonder if some ways there's some of a carryover effect between the two. I think there has been. I mean, there's been Kirk Campbell has talked about looking at the Lions, for plays, and it sounds like the Lions maybe even taking some. There was a play I think earlier in the season that Michigan ran that the Lions ended up using too. So like they're starting to see some crossover between the two. And I think it's going to continue also even with Michigan State because they run West Coast principles now under Jonathan Smith. And, so a lot of that stuff is run by Ben Johnson at the Lions. So, there's a lot of good football being played right now in Michigan.
Yeah, no, interesting. And as former Michigan players become whoever they become, wherever they become, I think that's where we want to start. Just everybody has heard the number, right? 18 NFL combine selection or invites, the most in the history of the event for Michigan this just last month. It was at the very beginning of March and now we're at the end of April. So it's almost 2 months ago. But now as mocks are really sort of tightening up, it seems people are landing in that 14 to 15, maybe 16 draft selection window for Michigan. But we can talk about the depth of it all we want. I think number one is JJ McCarthy, obviously. Let's dial in what we think sort of just happens with him a little bit. I think we wanted to touch on general draft things, but a few specifics as well. Vikings. I don't know the last time I saw something that was not the Vikings are trading to either 4 or 5 and drafting JJ.
No, I would agree that. That seems to be the kind of consensus opinion is that he seems like it would be a fit there. That's certainly what you hear with the chatter. But again, I think Bill Belichick said on the Pat McAfee show, which I thought was pretty insightful, that you really can't believe anything that's coming out until like 12 hours before the draft because most of the chatter is agent driven. It doesn't behoove any of the teams to really tip you off as to what they're planning to do, before when it just comes out that, if they're trying to maneuver within the draft, and they're going to have to make some kind of move, but you don't tip your hand this early. And so a lot of this stuff is, again, agent driven and what you're hearing right now. And the media is, partially irresponsible. And I think, in some ways for peddling some, misinformation and smoke screens during this period. And that's always been my deepest frustration with the draft and everything else. It's just that you really, all of it just is, possibly false information that's being, circulated right now. And so like, you can't get a real sense of what's going on. And, I think the media is, partially responsible for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the few unfortunate necessary evils, right? Because the media is responsible for being that intermediary between the movers and shakers and the fans, right? And it is your job to say what the decision makers and the people you trust are saying. Now, they are the ones who are really controlling the narrative. You're just sharing that narrative, or they're telling you their version of it. And it's our job, your job, everyone's job to decipher it. But people want content, and I don't think, maybe this is splitting hairs, and I totally see what you mean on the whole, but I don't know how irresponsible I find it to say, look, I think that people are saying the Vikings are trading up. And there is some. Sometimes when it is here we go. Like when I think it was Jonathan Givony had Bronny James in the first round of the NBA mock when he was that's irresponsible. That's ridiculous. But like 2 years out, right? But I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but I'd
the question is, who is telling you this? I mean, is it the agents that are doing it that want this information out for their client? I mean, or is it actually the team? And if the team is telling you, what's the agenda there? I mean, and that's part of your responsibility as a reporter, is to be able to kind of filter that and determine what the agenda is. And I think a lot of this stuff is so over the top ridiculous. I mean, even I don't understand how this kind of whole cottage industry was even created. I mean, it's just because it's a futile exercise. You're going to find out eventually anyway. Why is there so much speculation about this? And then like the constant just, hubbub about, can JJ McCarthy do this, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, as far as whether he, threw enough. And I mean, everything is parsed to the nth degree. And it's impossible to determine anybody's personal, trajectory, really. I mean, it's like, it really is. I mean, it's just, but fans
want to know what to expect. And
right. But it's
and the media and those who cover it are seen as the experts. So it is, and it is that balance of I mean, you want to be right. Like everybody wants to be. Well, here we go. What's your worst take? What's one of your worst public take? I've got some bad ones, but I'm happy to share my. And it's like, I mean, thankfully I'm not an NFL evaluator. I was dead wrong. I said I wouldn't touch Justin Herbert in the first round. Whoops. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah. I mean, it happens. You know what I mean? And I'm not, that's not my job, but I just like, sometimes you get it wrong. And like, and as long as we're being responsible, I mean, you're a very responsible man, right?
But that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't.
Okay, but now you have to out yourself on a bad take because that was really.
Well, I remember telling somebody that Rush Hour is going to bomb in the box office. I mean, like, and they ended up it was actually somebody who was directly involved with that movie, and I told them, I was like, yeah, that thing's not going to do well. I was like, this is like a ridiculous concept. And that's becoming like one of the big franchises for that movie studio. So yeah, that was a terrible take.
Andrew, what's your worst sports take?
I'm still not ready to give up on it yet, but I was a ride or die Mac Jones guy, and he just put me in my grave last year. Oh. His rookie year won me over. I thought he was going to be the, a dude, and just time and time again, I get clowned by my friends because, first of all, he was done dirty by the Patriots. Let's just agree on that. They did him so dirty.
Yeah.
But he did not help himself out a lot, if we're being honest.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's the tantalizing prospect about Mac Jones, right? Like, I don't know how.
I mean, what's the tantalizing prospect about Brock Purdy? Like, what? I mean, some guys he was accurate. He had a big frame. He got the ball out on time. He led a not very talented Patriots team to 10-6 in his rookie year. It was not very good the year before. I mean, remember watching him in college? He was getting that ball out bang, getting it to the receivers, and then obviously he didn't have any
receivers were pretty good.
Yeah, but
receivers are pretty good in Alabama.
There's a lot of quarterbacks who can't deliver that ball out on time.
To be fair to Mac Jones, though, I mean, he was kind of put in a terrible position with Matt Patricia.
Thank you.
I mean,
he was.
I don't know. I mean, again, I think all of this stuff, and I was saying this a few podcasts ago, it's situation dependent. I mean, depending on what team 100%. You get in, organization you're in. Yep. I mean, guys that go to the Raiders. I mean, Randy Moss was terrible with the Raiders. Randy Moss with the Patriots was great. It's just it's all about what the fit is and how you function within that team dynamic.
I'm in lockstep with what you're saying, but the dirty secret is it's our job to project, to prognosticate, to talk about it. And here, since you're talking about fit, right, and all these things, can you give me one player. Let's each do one, and then we'll wrap the draft talk that somehow made it everywhere from Jordan's fiance to rush hour. Give me one Michigan player. I said Jordan's fiance, Andrew's fiance. One Michigan player that you like, a specific fit, like where you want to see him and why. Can you give me one?
I would go Blake Corum in Baltimore. I just think, again, John Harbaugh, likes those kind of guys. And I mean, he's a guy that's just going to get you yards and fit in well with that team dynamic that they have in Baltimore, and that offense in particular. He's got the kind of, spirit that is probably needed to play for that kind of team. And, obviously it's a pretty seamless transition going from one Harbaugh to the other. But I think, he values John, Harbaugh, the same stuff that Jim did. I mean, as far as, obviously running the football. And so I think, Corum would be perfect for them.
I like the style fit, but didn't they just sign Derrick Henry?
I agree. Derrick Henry, I don't know if it's a long-term option. I mean, Corum is kind of that guy that, is going to be there for years and would actually be a solid guy. Like a marketing.
It is, but that's just, you'd have to use a 3rd-round pick to grab him. And I would think not that he's not worth it, but their skill set is the same, right? Like neither of them catch the back. Like they're 1st and 2nd down backs. They're not 3rd down backs. So, I don't know.
That's the thing. Corum didn't get much chance to catch it out of the backfield, but he can. He
can, and they'll use him that way more in the NFL certainly than he was used to that way in Michigan. You're right. I mean, didn't you see him running around the convention center, the Indiana Convention Center?
He was doing it during pro day, and that's and also, again, in the Rose Bowl, he had a couple of big catches, including a touchdown and the one on 4th down that was like a huge play. So I think actually,
Reiner, you, me, and Andrew all caught that 4th down pass.
That is true.
I mean, Dad, just a lot of things with it. I made some blasphemous statements on this podcast. He was just standing there. And it was 5 years.
The same one against MSU 2 years before. It was a big play in that game that he ended up dropping the ball.
Oh, and 21 game.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah.
The law. Yeah.
Yes.
He takes that to the house.
Think about that. Yeah, a big drop from Blake and the fumble.
And the J.J. McCarthy fumble. Yeah, which, again, at that time, Michigan fans were like, they were jumping all over him.
And could you imagine anyone doing what Kenneth Walker did that day today? 5 touchdowns and 200 yards. You know what I mean? Like single-handedly, one person beating Michigan. That was. Yeah. I feel the more you get removed from it, I feel like it's like that's performance is just. Like sometimes
the individual performance of it. Yeah, because at the time it felt like Michigan State was like pretty good at the time, record wise. And then you see it now, what Michigan State became. Yeah, it's even crazier. It's like, whoa, he really did do it by himself.
I would also give Jay Johnson credit, actually. As much as Michigan State fans probably, he would hate to say that, but he ran tempo against Michigan there. And then, that game was very instructive to Michigan going forward because they really did adjust. That was one of the things that Minter did really well was get them to be able to play against tempo teams and get aligned pretty quickly. So, that game actually ended up probably benefiting Michigan in the long run.
It did, but if you remember, Reiner, it still gave them troubles at times, right? You remember that first half in Bloomington in 22, the next year? Yeah, when they could, it was 10-10 at the half. And obviously they made the adjustments at halftime and just suffocated them afterwards. But they were I can't remember the quarterback's name because it wasn't Penix and it wasn't Tuttle. But it was like they're moving it. Yes. Connor I think it was Connor Bazelak. That sounds right. Former Missouri Tiger. All right, let's break there. And I'm going to give my quick fit. Even though you didn't ask me for it. I would like to see Mikey Sainristil in Baltimore. Talk about the same thing.
Creative guys, real creative.
I know I pushed back on Reiner's fit in Baltimore. I think that's maybe like, I mean, I see this stuff. I was going to do that anyway. How about I just polar opposite? I could also see him in like a Pittsburgh, right? Even though I won't go with just that, like a defensive coach, someone who trusts their players, right? Like someone is going to have to, whoever takes Mikey Sainristil is going to realize that they got to steal wherever they take him. Like, he will exceed where he's that's what I'd put. That's, if I'm putting my money on one Michigan player in this draft, it's Mikey Sainristil. I don't care that he's 5'9", 182. I mean, you cannot teach ball instincts like he has. You cannot teach. I mean, when he touches the ball, he can literally take it back. Like, everything is almost a pick six. He can jump the route. He can like from the slot. It's so hard to play defense from the slot, right? And like guard the boundary and man people coming across the formation. I think he can do it all. He can do it all.
I've got a quick one for you. Just came to me a few minutes ago. Roman Wilson to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, they have Ronnie Bell. I mean, they took Ronnie Bell. So I think yeah,
maybe that's why I thought of it. But I feel like he'd be a good. They love those little kind of receivers who can do it all.
Late second.
I mean, the 49ers will use value pick. Like, they don't really care about value. They're kind of like the Lions. They'll pick guys based on how much they like the player. It doesn't really matter. They traded a bunch of picks for Christian McCaffrey. Here's a running back. Like, if they like a player, I think they would take him. So I think maybe it doesn't happen, but I think it'd be a good fit for Roman individually.
I like that.
I could see Roman in Philadelphia. I could see him in, LA Rams. I mean, like those. I mean, any place that runs any kind of
a lot of mesh.
Yeah, a lot of
crossers.
Yeah. I
mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. I mean, can't stop it, and that's new. That's where the NFL is going. All right, good stuff. We're going to take our first break. There's going to be 2 breaks today because we're going to do a little spring game recap, some thoughts, then we get to hoops. Don't go anywhere. It's Hail Yes. Welcome back. We are a few days removed now, Reiner, from a riveting 17-7 Maize victory over Blue in the spring game. I say that somewhat facetiously, although I shouldn't, because really it was great. I don't know about you, to see some football, right? First game in 3.5 months, or first live pads in 3.5 months. Been talking a lot about behind the scenes, right? It's nice to see some of it with our own eyes. How about some takeaway number 1? If I'm asking you, what is your main thought after you just watched what you watched, Reiner, what would you say?
Yeah, I think, the main thought is that it's hard to imagine that Michigan can go forward and be extremely successful if the quarterback play looks like it did on Saturday. I mean, the fact is that, there were a lot of passes that were thrown in that game that were really dangerous and could have been picked off, or would have ended alluding to the Jaden Denigal interception. But yeah, Alex Orji, I thought, obviously showed off his athletic traits, and he does seem to have a live arm. But again, there were too many passes that were thrown up for grabs, or were dangerous, or behind, that would suggest that they're going to have a tough time in 3rd and long situations. And last year they were obviously extremely good in those situations because of J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, well, it's never been. I mean, Michigan's MO prior to last year was just staying ahead of the sticks, right? And I mean, and you wrote a great piece about the complementary nature of the offense and the defense, how necessary that is, and part of that is being in 3rd and manageables consistently, right? It is. I mean, Michigan did kind of defy the odds last year with their ability to convert 3rd and longs, which that is the reason why JJ McCarthy is this top 5, 10, 15, whatever you want to call it, draft pick quarterback guy. Because the polarizing part is, he didn't have to do that much. All right, well, there was a lot of pretty muddy situations, and turn on the tape, he made some big throws, right? So, and to your point, it's what we saw. Alex Orji did not. I mean, no one is going to be capable of doing what JJ McCarthy did last year. That's just point blank. But what you have to keep in mind, and I know you do. I mean, what we all need to keep in mind is, especially from Saturday. I mean, he didn't have his offensive line, right? He had none of his starters in any real measurable way. He didn't have his usual complement of weapons. Now, that said, he was still in a pocket, dropping, moving, throwing to people in a game, and it didn't look right. But it wasn't.
And he wasn't facing more than basic defense, essentially. I mean, there were not.
And he wasn't allowed to get touched.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that 18-yard scramble, he would have been tackled before that. He would
have been tackled about the 4 yard. I
think even before that. I think when he got actually pressured,
You think he would have been tackled in the backfield?
Yeah, I think he would have been sacked. I mean, like most people would have honored that probably as a sack. Given that. I mean, again, you're not really supposed to use those at kind of point. In fact, they usually call the play dead if the guy starts to scramble, because what's the point of it if he can't be touched? I mean, people are not going to be chasing him at the same level that they would be if they could actually tackle him. And so, but you
can't call it.
Yeah, I think there is concern. I mean, again, they only produced points on 4 of the 14 drives. Again, this was not a full complement of the offense. It was split up between the two teams. So you don't have a true sense of what they could do when they're all put together. But, 4 of 14 drives, it's not efficient. Last year, they averaged, over 3 points per drive, which was like 5th in the country. I mean, they were one of the most efficient offenses in the country. And, that has a huge effect, as you alluded to, I wrote a column about this, but their ability to stay on the field had a major impact on that defense. And that defense had a lot more depth than this defense. And so,
is it fair of us to compare anything to last year? That doesn't feel fair.
I think it's.
I know that's the standard, but this Michigan team is not that Michigan team.
Right. But people, are going to expect Michigan to have something, comparable. And, one of the big things was, Michigan's defense played 60 plays per game last season, which was the lowest in the Power 5. And, you give up. There's a huge correlation between the plays defended and the amount of points you give up. Michigan State, for instance, 3 years ago, when they gave up more yards, was having to play an inordinate amount of plays, and because they couldn't get off the field. And a defense that gets taxed ends up showing itself over the course of the season. I did a story 10 years ago. Chip Kelly got pissed when I asked the question, but it was time of possession, you don't seem to value it, and your defense is being taxed, especially in the NFL where you have 53 guys. And you can only play 45 on Sundays or 46. That ends up having an effect towards the end of the season. So that towards the end of the season, their defense started hemorrhaging every year. And that's why he wasn't successful in the NFL, because he didn't understand how the offense has an effect on the defense. And if they can't sustain drives in Michigan, it's going to have a deleterious effect on the defense.
Yes, I would argue no program embodies and lives and abides by that philosophy more than Michigan. Yeah. Right. And so they're not going to deviate from that. It's just, I guess, to your point, it's a matter of if they can do that, if any of these quarterbacks are capable of doing that. And you know what? I guess my one of my takeaways is, I think this is going to be another, you saw a lot of flashes, right? This is going to be another good ball team. It doesn't matter. It just reminds me, there's times where there's names you don't know as much, you're not as familiar. This is not going to be Michigan last year, but this could be. I don't think it will have the same outcome, but this could be Michigan 2021, right? Or 19, 18, like 17, like those, like it's another one of those really good teams that doesn't have the quarterback. How many of these Michigan teams have we seen? Right, awesome defense, built through the trenches. You got some running backs you think you trust. A few receivers on the outside, never enough, but you got some. Does this feel familiar? And like everything before JJ.
Yeah, but they're also a team that's going to have to play up front. I mean, they're going to have to get a lead early, I think, and because they're going to have a tough time coming back if they're going to have to. They get down by 2 touchdowns or 10 points. I mean, that's tough. I mean, they also have an extremely tough schedule. I mean, it's not the schedule is not as favorable as it was the last couple of years. As far as with games against Washington, USC, Oregon, or Ohio State, Texas. Early on, you're going to get a real sense of where this team is and how competitive they can really be. And so, I'm really curious to see how the offense goes. I mean, I was kind of surprised that Kirk Campbell, the offensive coordinator, said like he thinks that there's more explosive elements on the offense than there was last year. I was like, are you really? I mean, like it's 10. You lost 10 starters. Yeah. But a lot of those guys were extremely good players. I mean, between Corum and
Roman
and Wilson and obviously JJ. I mean, it's and even AJ Barner was a guy that was a receiving weapon too. I mean, like he was a good complement to Colston Loveland.
Cornelius Johnson had like 50 grabs and 600 yards, right? Like, and he's the forgotten person. Think Michigan could use Cornelius Johnson this year?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, and that's another thing. They were, we were talking with Frederick Moore after the scrimmage, right? He's talking about they got 5 dudes in the room, right? Like, he's like, we're just gassed. Like in practice, he's like, I love it. I'm getting tons of reps. Like I'm growing, I'm learning, but he's like, and Kurt, like there were other, was it? I think it was Kirk Campbell. Yeah, it was Kirk Campbell who said it explicitly because it was Sharon who would not say it explicitly earlier this week. Kirk's like, look, hammies are gonna come up, right? You're gonna someone's gonna get sick. Someone's gonna twist an ankle. Something is going to happen. And there is just simply not enough depth. Not that there's not talent, not that we don't like enough guys. There's not enough bodies in this room. And so we have to go to the portal. Well, Michigan will add a wide receiver, if not 2, in the next 12 days. 10 days. That's 8 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they also have to get somebody who's a downfield threat or somebody who can stretch the defense, or they have to show that element because teams are just going to stack, the box. And just load up down there and dare Michigan to throw the ball downfield or just throw the ball period. And so that's going to be the question is can they get somebody who's going to be able to stretch the defense? Can those guys get off coverage? And we saw Kendrick Bell catch a 42-yard deep ball, but he was going against a walk-on DB. It's not a person that. He's going to necessarily face on Saturdays and in the Big Ten. So there's some real questions as it relates to the offense. The defense, it was hard to get a sense of what they are. I think they're going to be obviously very solid, but Ron Moore's injury is big. Wick Barnadell was talking about him being like Eric Weddle back there and having a real sense of things, and so just being able to organize the defense, make the call on the field, knowing to be in the right position, those are important things, especially at the safety spot. So, Rod Moore was also, big on, being able to, kind of get guys aligned correctly within the defense. So I think that's another question I have as far as coming out of spring ball.
Yeah, it's probably going to be more on Quentin Johnson there. I will say I liked what I saw out of Zeke Berry from that nickel spot. He was in run support. He could maybe move to safety too. I don't know what they're going to want to do there, like Jaden McBurrows and Zeke Berry, but some combination. Berry he popped. We're like, and it's so hard for me to try to really notice what's going on, because normally I'm watching one side of the ball, right? Like, I cover Michigan. I don't need to worry about who's making the tackle and who was doing the other thing on the other side of the formation and what happened here. In the spring game, every single player is relevant to us, right? And when I notice a defensive player doing things that they have not like multiple times, I guess that's just sort of what I look for. And he made multiple plays in run support, so maybe they could be. And I think, and Sharon Moore said that he had been really impressed with Zeke as well. But I think you're right. I mean, you don't just lose Rod Moore and it's like, all right, we're good. What's funny is I was almost just quickly was going to say, I mean, he's their best defensive player, right? Like, but obviously not. He was probably number 4. But most people teams don't have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Will Johnson. Anything else spring game related?
Well, I mean, I think there's some, again, Sharon Moore, like, wouldn't say definitively whether the quarterback is on the roster, yet. But Kirk Campbell basically said that they're poo-pooed the idea that they're not that they're going to go into the portal and get another person. So, and I don't know how, really, again, there's not many guys that are out there that necessarily would come in and be a quick fix for them. So, and
whoever they would bring in would have to be fighting an uphill battle, because they wouldn't have gone through spring practices, right? I mean, the other quarterbacks all have been in the system for at least some time and just went through spring practices. So whoever they'd bring in would be severely working uphill, unless it's just like a total stud,
Yeah. But yeah, there's some interesting questions that we didn't really get a ton of answers from, Sharon on Monday coming out of the spring game. He was very, kind of vague on every front imaginable, like purposely vague.
Yes, and I asked him.
Yeah,
I asked him why, and we didn't even get an answer as to why.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just like, that wasn't the most confidence-inspiring, press conference if I were, a fan watching it. I mean, I think, whether they're playing it close to the vest just because, that's what paranoid coaches generally do, that's okay. But I mean, you're still trying to get a sense of who this guy is compared to Jim Harbaugh. Because, I mean, he keeps saying he's not Jim Harbaugh, but everything he does is Jim Harbaugh, or going to be Jim Harbaugh. And it's like, there's going to come a point during the season where he's going to have to kind of assert himself, and there might be a situation that he's, he can't necessarily call upon from his past experiences with Harbaugh and be able to make his own call and own determination, own evaluation.
Well, we were talking, Reiner, and I mean, this is a learning experience for Sharon Moore as well, right? This is the first time he's done that, as much as everyone wanted to act like, oh, he was like, look how much he head coach. Like, that's not being a head coach. Jim was there all week. He was the head coach on Saturdays. He is now the program CEO. Very different. And so there is just going to be some learning curve. And I think because of, we were floating the idea, I guess maybe this is too much into the human psychology. Shout out to Sean Windsor. You wonder if, because of his introduction to the world at that Penn State game, with how brash and with that being people's first taste of Sharon Moore, it was over the top. I mean, it was just a high emotion. I mean, far be it from me to call someone else over the top emotional. Okay. I can understand it. And I mean, I could not possibly imagine the emotion you're feeling after doing something like that. Right. However, that lives on the internet forever, and it does look a little silly. Both things can be true. And so I wonder if he is just so actively dialing it back. I mean, it is sort of his nature, right? Even when he was OC, he never liked to give us much. He'd never like to give us much. He would say, I mean, but there would be some decent lines, right? Like when we were asking about that, I remember talking about everyone was so stuck on 50-50 run pass. He's like, well, a balanced offense does not mean you run the ball as much as you pass the ball. It means you can run the ball every bit as much as you can pass the ball, and you can do whatever, whenever. I'm like, great thought. Wonderful thought. I haven't gotten something like that since he's been head coach, right? It's been, hey, Sharon, looks like you guys got to add to the portal, right? And we'll see. Well, Kirk Campbell, I mean, he just told us that, yeah, we're going to look at some. All right. Then you got, just some thoughts about the quarterback battle, right? And of course he's not going to give us his play sheet, but you would like to just get a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, especially because he has to assert himself as the new leader of the program. I mean, a big personality just walked out the door. And so we don't really know much about Sharon Moore as a person, an individual, really like how he's going to put his stamp on it. And if I'm a player, I'm wondering, like, well, what are you bringing to the table? Like, I mean, outside, I mean, I know. I
will say the players. I mean, they seem to be.
Sure, but I mean, like, I'm talking about future recruits. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about a recruit who's going to come in. Like, what are you doing that makes you a great coach? I mean, I understand you can copy the playbook of Jim Harbaugh, but like, what are you going to do that's kind of unique and about your own? What are your personal convictions? Like, you can't just be a chameleon and just adapt to your environment. And, just because you've been in the program for 5-6 years, that's, you're just going to just repeat and repeat. I mean, there has to be an evolution there. And that evolution comes out of your own ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe some people are more private. Maybe there is some layer of that he's not showing us. And there are coaching trees, of course, right? And where people come with the same fundamental principles. I mean, we see it on just the defensive side of the ball here. But to your point, there needs to be adaptation. There needs to be your spin on it. It needs to be your flavor. Just like Wink Martindale's saying, right? Like McDonald did it his way. Jesse Minter did it his way. Yeah, I do it my way. It's all the same idea, but we do it our way.
Yeah, Wink Martindale has his own personal convictions and ideas, and like those are
yes,
and those come out, and that's a sign of why again he's been in the game as long as he has.
Yeah. All right, and I think that's a good place to break there because we gotta talk about one more new Michigan athletics coach, Dusty May, and the red hot Michigan basketball program. Busy weekend. We'll talk about what it's looking like. Don't go away. This is Hell Yes. All right, Reiner. Part 3, the hoops portion of the segment. Hoops segment of the show, I guess is a better way to put it. Doesn't really matter. Anyways, Michigan basketball suddenly got some juice, got a little bit of life to it, right? Dusty May, of course, brought on from Florida Atlantic as the new head coach about 1 month ago, a little less, 4 weeks ago. And he had to put a staff together and did that for the first couple weeks. And then it has been getting guys on campus, trying to lock down transfers, trying to figure out some former FAU guys, try to see who's left. Maybe 24 commits, 25 commits, just got a 24. Should I go through sort of the rundown of what's happened, or do you want to give a thought first and then we'll a little bit specific? This is great podcasting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll give a thought. I mean, I guess as far as what his strategy seems to be is to get guys in they're going to help in the near term, but also in the long term. And so, I mean, and he said that at the opening press conference that he was going to want to try to be competitive early, but also developmental too, where like they're getting guys that are going to be there 2, 3, 4 years. And so far, that's been his strategy and seems to be executing it.
Yeah, well. And keep in mind, the Michigan basketball program is largely going to have to do it that way, given how difficult it is. We've seen the issues getting credits transferred in, and there's not going to be a lot of people who just finished their junior year, right, coming to as a senior or maybe with 2 years of eligibility. Like you got to have only played 2 years. You got to be a freshman or a sophomore, or have graduated yet redshirted and had one year left. But it was when he was introduced, there was nobody on this roster, right? Literally everybody was in the portal, undecided. It was bare bones.
Cheddar
never officially entered the portal, but I guess that's fair. However, he was not committed to Michigan, and Dusty May was not committed to him. They spoke and they had, but there was it was as malleable as could be. He just as easily could have been gone. It was not firm. I guess you could say yes, he was not in the portal. But he could have been in 2 seconds, and there was no certainty by any means that he was staying. They had to see that it worked for both sides. And here we are about 1 month later, and Will Cheddar is back. George Washington III, who did enter the portal, is back. Dusty May was able to hold on to one freshman of the two who were committed, Darrell Fat Brooks from Grand Rapids, who's Mr. Michigan basketball. He also got a signee from another freshman, Justin Pippen, son of Scottie Pippen. So that could be just frankly kind of fun, right? Separately from the basketball element of it. And then today he got yet another freshman who was committed to him at Florida Atlantic, but now will come to Ann Arbor. Why is his name not in front of me? It's Kaysen, right? Kaysen? We're doing a great job of this. Hold on. No, Lorenzo Kaysen. There we go. I didn't even look it up. It was just, it had to come to me. Lorenzo Kaysen, because I remember thinking Lorenzo Kane. I was like, you remember that when he was a stud center fielder for the Royals, Lorenzo Kane? Anywho, so those are the three freshmen coming in. But to your point, where it seems this year's roster is really being built, and there's room for the future, has been the portal. And that has been 5 guys in 4 days. It's Danny Wolf, the 7-foot center from Yale, who averaged 15 and 10 as a first-team All-Ivy League player last year. Then there are a couple of guards. Yale beat Auburn last year in the NCAA tournament, for what it's worth. And speaking of Auburn, one of those guards, Trey Donaldson, is now going to be teammates with Danny Wolf. We can get a little bit into more of these players. I guess I'll do it now. Donaldson, he averaged 6.7 points, 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and has played like 67 games as a guard in the SEC. So the numbers aren't huge, but that's another big addition. Reiner, I guess I'll just sort of rip through the names quickly, and then we'll hash out their more specifics. Roddy Gale Jr., sophomore from Ohio State, a guard. Reuben Jones, senior, or now a graduate student from North Texas. And Sam Walters, a freshman sharpshooter from Alabama. There's a lot to like about each of these guys, Reiner. I don't know if there's any one who you think is more important, or if you are just sort of seeing the combination of the group here.
No, I don't think there's anybody necessarily like that is more important. Obviously, I think having somebody like Wolf, in the middle. I mean, you can just build off of, and you have a solid guy who's been productive already in his career. I mean, from a points and rebounds standpoint. So I mean, like here's a guy that you can actually kind of build around, who's going to probably be reliable down low. And I mean, obviously with Harris Reed going to UConn, I mean, they need somebody in the middle, and again, Michigan basketball last obviously 4 or 5 years has played off, it's down low guys. I mean, a new guy though is now running the program. And I think that they're going to be able to, again, employ some of the thoughts that he had where, again, modern day basketball, where it's a lot of, high percentage shots down low and 3-pointers. And so I think that this kind of composition gives them the ability to do that.
Yeah, certainly when you talk about the 3-point aspect as well. So, I mean, some of the floor spacers, the shooters. So you got Reuben Jones, who we mentioned from North Texas. I mean, he's played 110 games of college ball, right? So just someone who's been around the block, averaged 12.1 points last year. Dude shot 41.6% from long range on 4 attempts a game, right? Like not small volume. I mean, not huge volume, but decent volume. And he was double-digit scorer. Sam Walters, as a freshman at Alabama, only like 12 minutes a game. But I mean, he shot almost 40%, 39 of 99, 39.4%. And I mean, I saw this one picture of what looked like him throwing a windmill dunk down in warm-up. So maybe he's got a little bounce to him too. Sounds like, and Roddy Gale is probably who Michigan fans would be the most familiar with of the bunch. Who comes from Ohio State. That's been a common pipeline the last month. Tony Alford, the running backs coach, also came from Ohio State recently. But I mean, Roddy Gale took that sophomore step you really like to see from freshman to sophomore, right? I mean, he was their third leading scorer, averaged like 13 a game. He did not shoot it well from long range this year. He was like 28%. I mean, that is really, really struggling. However, the year before, on significantly less volume, he was 42%, and he's like an 83% free throw shooter. If you are that good of a like that's a high clip for college to make free throws, and usually that translates to shooting percentages all across the board. I will do the equivalent of the shoot the boot guarantee that Roddy Gale shoots better than 28% from 3-point range this year.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's obviously a strategy behind what he's doing here, and again, it kind of falls in line with what he said at the opening press conference. And again, like you mentioned, how he's worked the portal, understanding the restrictions at Michigan, which didn't seem like Juwan Howard always understood, because I mean, he had guys that he thought he had in the bag, and then they were not able to actually enroll at the university. So I mean, like that's part of the number one priorities is like know what the landscape is, know what your environment is, and then adjust accordingly. And it seems like Dusty May has done that.
Yeah, well, KYP, right? Know your personnel. Well, I mean, know who your personnel can be. However, I will give Juwan. I mean, that's one spot I give him a little bit of leniency, because I mean, I was speaking to someone a couple months ago, formerly around the program, who was just explaining, right? I mean, they find out that Caleb Love has interest in their program. I mean, what are you going to say? No? What are you going to, I mean, like, they don't know exactly where all of his everything stands. I mean, they should have a better sense by now, but really it's more how I was explained to me is it was a say yes now and figure out how later, right? We've all been there in certain ways. When there's same with Terrence Shannon. If there's a guy tantalizing enough, of course, come on, we got a spot. And then you figure it out. And 99% of programs in America can figure it out. There are standards and rules and regulations in this particular admissions office that have prevented that. However, I want to just speak to back to your point to Dusty May and his understanding of it. I was talking to someone in the athletic department the other day, and they told me he hit the ground, quote, sprinting, not running, sprinting, right? And just how pleased they are to see with the vision that he pitched when he was a candidate, right? And you've talked about it, like all the things he said he's going to do, and then he said in the intro press conference, it's only been 5-6 weeks since he was having those discussions and then became official, 5 weeks. But I mean, just like little viral videos, like him going around to fraternities in Ann Arbor and rallying the students. And that's not reinventing the wheel, but it's hard to describe how incredibly needed that is in Ann Arbor. Chrysler Center was a library this last season. And I mean, you kind of understand it with how tough it was. And that does play into one another. But even at the beginning of the season, when they were maybe they could fight for attorney Berth, you never know. There was never any juice around the season. I mean, all the juice from the program had just been squeezed out of it. That's at least how it felt. Sitting around there, and just for Dusty to understand, like, hey, we need you. Like, it is important to have a student base that cares about it. I mean, I've been pretty amazed how apathetic some of my big Michigan fan friends became to basketball, right? Like not even watching a game. These are guys who, I mean, like back in the Trey Burke, Nick Stauskas, I mean, you couldn't even imagine, right? And now they're like, I don't give a bleep. And so, or that's how they became. So Dusty probably got that sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he came in trying to re-energize the brand, so to speak. But, I mean, Juwan Howard obviously did some outright reach. I mean, he went around and I think distributed pizza on campus and did some of that stuff too, during his tenure. But again, when you're losing and, that community outreach, I mean, kind of goes unnoticed and people don't really care about it as much. I mean, when you're fresh and new and you make an effort early on, I mean, that helps build bridges and, reconnects the fan base to the program. That's part of the idea. And, it'll probably continue with Dusty. I can't imagine, he probably won't see the value and continue to do things like that. But it's really going to come down to just winning and, and getting results on the floor, because that will determine the health of the program and the interest of the fan base.
Yeah. And we're getting for a month ago, having nothing in the program to where it is now, people got to feel really good. If you're a fan of this program, you got to feel really good about just how quickly it turned around. It doesn't guarantee anything. You're right. They got to win it on the court, but they've done the right things so far. Like adding pieces who, like, even on paper, they just it's like, oh yeah, well, he's probably the one, he's probably the two. I mean, they can complement one another. Now you can move Will Cheddar back to the stretch four. You got center five. Like they need some more big men, and that's probably, I imagine, where they'll go with the rest of their ports. But you just see it. You just see the fit. Last year, you got Jace Howard and Terrence Williams and Will Cheddar and Olivier Kumwa and Trey Jackson. It's like, how many stretch fours do we have? It's half the roster, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just like even the little things, are sort of adding up. And so probably feel good if you are a Michigan Hoops fan. Wow, busy show. What do you think about that, guys? That was a lot.
This is where Andrew chimes in and gives his evaluation.
Yeah, I think
great show as always, guys. Great show as always.
Great. You had were you editing? I think Andrew just tuned out on us for a minute, but it's okay. We got him back. No comment. We didn't need to hear that.
I definitely was not working on posting a story to the website and a bunch of other things at the same time. So
yes,
multitasking.
All right. Well, we did it. Thanks as always to Andrew, to Reiner, to our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery-Nichols, executive editor, Anjanette Delgado, sports editor, Kirkland Crawford, and audio engineer, Robin Chan. For the whole gang, I'm Tony Garcia. This is Hail Yes. Catch you next time.